What's up, everybody? Good morning. Welcome back to A to Z Sports Notre Dame, another live stream that typically takes place on Wednesdays at noon Eastern time, but we had to do a little bit of a pivot this week. I was actually planning on doing it on Thursday. Then, just kind of full transparency, my oldest daughter has her first ever ear infection. So the ear infection was fun and had to get through that for the last couple of days. So she's been staying home the last two, but she's back in school today. So I had to pivot, figure out a new time, but we are here finally to do the live stream for the week. Just want to let you guys know, I didn't want to just bypass the live stream this week and just move on to next week. Wanted to get a show in before the weekend. So we are here to talk about 2027 Notre Dame quarterback recruiting. Over the last week or two, we have seen a little bit of movement in the quarterback conversation for the 2027 class, and there's now three players that you really need to have your eyes set on to potentially be a part of Notre Dame's 2027 group that already has 7 commitments and has a strong early foundation that's being built, even through some coaching changes this offseason. But as we know, quarterback is not only the most important position in football, but it's also arguably the most important position in all of sports, and I would say that it is the most important position in all of sports. So before we get in here, we got people filing in, make sure that you are liking the video, subscribing to the YouTube channel. If you're listening live on Facebook, make sure to hit that like button as well. If you are listening on either Facebook or on Twitter, I would suggest to come over to the YouTube channel and subscribe there. But more than importantly, for these live shows, come be a part of the conversation as we get some people filing in here. Because as you guys know, I like to be as interactive as possible, read a lot of comments, answer questions. So without the community that is being built in this chat, we wouldn't be able to do this. So Tex ND, good morning. Good morning to you. No live Wednesday show this week. Yep, Tex ND. So I just kind of talked about it. My oldest daughter has an ear infection, so she's been staying home the last couple days. She's back at school today, in a little bit of pain and agony. So we had to adjust this week. But yes, typically Wednesdays noon Eastern time will be consistent. We'll try to keep that consistent for next week. I will be in Indianapolis for the NFL scouting combine though, so make sure that you hit the notification bell and you'll know when something's coming up, or you can follow me at Rise and Draft on Twitter, and I will update you all for when the next live show is coming next week. But let's talk about quarterback recruiting. Good morning, Castaway. Good morning, Jack. Good morning, morning Irish for life. Good morning, good morning, good morning. So I want to talk quarterback recruiting in 2027 because we have obviously had a lot of movement this offseason. Thinking back to later of the 2025 year, I think it was sometime in December, when Teddy Gerard, talented quarterback who was initially a part of the 2027 class, opted to reclassify to 2026, signed on the second national signing day. Will not be here in South Bend until the summer, but regardless, he will be a part of the 2026 Notre Dame football team, along with Noah Grubbs as a true freshman, and obviously Blake Hebert, a year older than him, and CJ Carr. Very talented quarterback room that is in South Bend for the 2026 season. But with Teddy Gerard reclassifying, obviously it gave Notre Dame a great opportunity to find another 2027 quarterback. And I think that the big part of this and this ideology of reclassification for Teddy Gerard was quite simply with how CJ Carr played as a redshirt freshman. You're hopeful that he's in the air for 2 more years, potentially, as a 2026 and 2027 starting quarterback for Notre Dame. But anytime you have that type of early success and you have the pedigree that CJ Carr has, you hope for the best, but you need to prepare for the worst. So for Notre Dame to be ahead of the curve, for Marcus Freeman, Mike Denbrock, Gino Guidugli to be ahead and make sure that your team is in a good spot after the 2026 season, you need to make sure that you have enough talented quarterbacks on campus, on your team, that you feel good about there being an heir apparent to CJ Carr in case he does make the jump to the NFL after his redshirt sophomore season, which is why we have seen that movement for Teddy. And I know that the staff is very high on Teddy Gerard. I think that they believe that with a year of maturation and that redshirt year on the horizon, I do think that Teddy Gerard is going to have a great chance to be the next guy after CJ Carr, whether that is in 2027 or 2028. I think Teddy Gerard has the type of upside to him. We'll see what Noah Grubbs does. We'll see how Blake Hebert continues to develop. We had Tex ND. Blake Hebert gets very little credit. It doesn't seem like anyone thinks he can be the guy. I will say this, Tex ND, is just from like my general talking points of like around the program and stuff. I do think, I think it's fair to say that Notre Dame has a little bit more of higher expectation for like Teddy Gerard in the long-term future of him being the starting quarterback than Blake Hebert. I think Blake needs some maturation and some developments. And I think this is going to be a big offseason for him. I have not cast away Blake Hebert because I do think that Blake Hebert has a lot of tools that are very intriguing and that can be developed. I think one thing to remember about Blake is that Blake did miss some time in his high school career with an injury, right? So he missed like basically an entire season. So he does have developmental time. We'll just see what that next step for him will be. We had a Tex ND who also asked, because I want to, before we get into the names, we'll knock out a couple of these questions for the current quarterback room. Tex ND says, how does Teddy Gerard reclassifying affect Noah Grubbs? I mean, I wouldn't say it affects Noah Grubbs, Tex ND, in terms of like, Noah Grubbs is going to get a chance to potentially develop and fight for that starting job whenever CJ leaves. I think there's a full intention there, obviously, and it's very early, so working off of just initial conversations there. But I will say that it might, I don't know if threaten is the right word, but it definitely does. It elevates the importance for Noah Grubbs and for Teddy Gerard, both of them, to make a good early impression on the staff and be able to really kind of hone in on their craft and be able to digest that playbook maybe a little bit earlier than anticipated. I do think if it was just Noah Grubbs going into the season as the only freshman quarterback, and Teddy Gerard was just on the horizon in 2027, I do think that there would be a little bit more of, okay, I have a year ahead of him. I have some time here. Let's really develop the craft. Let's really hit this playbook. Let's figure this out. And you just have a little bit more overall time. But for me, when I look at now them both be on campus, and I know that, you know, Noah Grubbs does get a little bit of a head start, him being an early enrollee versus a summer enrollee for Gerard, I do think there's still going to be an intentionality to let's try to figure this out early and try to get like and try to really take advantage of those early opportunities, because at the end of the day, Noah Grubbs in the spring is going to be one of the top 3 quarterbacks on campus for Notre Dame. So he's going to get a lot of reps here, right? So I really do think that it is an opportunity for Noah to take advantage of. But I do think there is going to be a little bit more, there's going to be urgency for one of these 2 young quarterbacks to come in and be like, yep, assert yourself as like, that's the guy that probably is the next guy after it. We had Tex ND also asked, and to be clear, Buckner is officially out, right? So there's been some weird stuff, Tex ND. I didn't think he had any eligibility left, and then someone said there's some way that he does have a year left, but he's not on the roster. So unless something changes, I also saw that he has already started his professional career outside of football with a nice job. So I think Tyler Buckner is done. Tyler Buckner is done right now. Andrew says, with the portal being so prominent and the potential to rebuild on D, if Carr goes pro after 2026, wouldn't you put it over 50% that Notre Dame goes portal in 2027? Andrew, I think it's always a possibility in the portal era, but obviously there has been an intentionality for this staff to try to recruit and develop the quarterback position. And I don't think they necessarily want to go back to the portal route unless they have to go to the portal route, if that makes sense. I think most teams would rather develop their own if they can, right? And we know from the Notre Dame perspective, they've had some success with transfer quarterbacks, some average success with transfer quarterbacks, but I do think that we saw, especially with Carr obviously in there, and then the Minchie battle last offseason, that I think they do want it to be homegrown if possible more than anything, right? So will they completely avoid a transfer quarterback in 20 for the 2027 season if CJ jumps early to the NFL? I wouldn't necessarily say that. I would say I need to see, just first and foremost, how does Teddy Gerard and Noah Grubbs develop in their first year? Do you feel good about one of those 2 guys being the next guy as a redshirt freshman? Because I know it's unsettling for some parts of the fan base to play a quarterback that's never started a game and all that type of stuff. But we just saw that success can happen in that realm, right? With a CJ Carr. So I just need a little bit more data points. I need a little bit more information before I immediately say it's over 50%, it's under 50%. I honestly don't know what the percentage would be. I would say that if one of those two guys doesn't step up, then yes, I would say it's greater than 50%. Absolutely. And if they don't showcase that they could be that guy early, yes, obviously that increases the time. But I just need to see some stuff first, right? Like I need to get some feedback. I need to see how they're developing physically, how they're maturing mentally. Like there's just a lot of factors that do come into play here. So we shall see. But I do think, and I will say this, Andrew, to your question, and again, more data points for me to really answer it as objectively as I possibly can. But I do think the fact that there was a push for reclassification for Teddy, and you're still also going to bring in another 2027 quarterback, I do think that that push up in that 2 quarterback class in 2026 does tell me personally, and some might disagree with this, but I do think that that speaks to that they would like one of these quarterbacks to be the guy. If neither of them develops, though, at the end of the day, will they look to the portal? I'm sure they will. But again, I just need a little bit more information before I say that's definitely where they will turn going into next season. Tex ND also said, and then we'll get to the players to keep an eye out in the 2027 recruit class here in a second, folks. Tex ND said, quarterback 2 is important. That is my main concern. Is it a true freshman, or will Blake Hebert step up, assuming QB2 will play many of the fourth quarters this upcoming season? And I don't have an answer for you on that one, Tex ND. And you are completely fair in like your, I don't know if skepticism is the right word, but like your angst with needing to know who quarterback 2 is, because last year it was like, okay, Kenny Minchey's your quarterback 2. You're cool. Like you're chilling, right? I don't know who will be quarterback 2 in 2026. I think that obviously I think of Blake Hebert as the year ahead of the other 2 coming in. I think he'll have every opportunity to show that he can be that guy, but I have no idea if Blake Hebert, if Notre Dame is comfortable with him being quarterback 2, or if they say, I'm just going to let one of these young cats be the backup and they're going to get the mop-up duty, and then they're going to roll into 2027 potentially being in, I don't want to say the driver's seat, but like being in good standing to potentially be the guy after Carr. I don't know. So it's unsettling. I get it. There's going to be some angst there, but I really don't know exactly who is going to be quarterback 2 in 2026. There's a lot of time and a lot of reps and a lot of things that need to go to see who that will be in the end. Andrew said, how would you approach quarterback if you were Notre Dame's general manager? I tend to be pro portal when you consider all the veteran quarterbacks in the college football playoff. I mean, I'm a recruit and develop guy, Andrew. So I think every program is different. And I think that, like, I mean, it's an imperfect comparison or an imperfect scenario, but I mean, would you trade any of the quarterbacks for any of the potential playoff teams right now going into 2026 over CJ Carr, for instance? And I'm just asking. I don't know if you would. Like, I mean, compare it to, let's say, Arch Manning for Texas, or Gunnar Stockton of Georgia, or Ohio State with Julian Sayin, or I'm just trying to think of like a couple other teams that could be like in that conversation. Like, I don't know if you would, Dante Moore for Oregon, maybe. Like, I don't know. I think that the portal can be an answer, obviously, and it has been an answer for some, but I don't think that has to be the only answer. And I think that every program is very different. Very, very, very different. I mean, we've seen Notre Dame have success and get to a national championship with a transfer quarterback. But again, going into 2026, are any of those quarterbacks that are on these potential playoff teams, are they a quarterback that you would trade the guy that you did recruit and develop? And I can't tell the future of Teddy Gerard, but what if Teddy comes in and it's like, okay, this guy, a year of maturation, redshirt, he could be that dude next. Like, he could be that guy. That's why I'm just like, I'm hesitant to just rush to judgment of what I would do next offseason, because I don't know how any of these guys are going to develop. I have zero idea. We also don't know if all those guys are going to be retained. So like, it's just an imperfect conversation right now, because I have no idea if Teddy Gerard is going to be mentally and physically ready to go. I have no idea if Noah Grubbs is better than maybe some people think he is, including myself to a degree, right? Like, I have no idea. Does Blake Hebert something just click this offseason? I don't know. So we'll see. We had Nathan. What's up, Nathan? Double R finally was able to catch you live. You were definitely missed on IB. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for joining the live show. Maybe if this goes well, maybe I'll start to do a little bit earlier in the day, other than noon Eastern time. I thought lunchtime would be a good time in the middle of the week, but not opposed to changing things up if it works better. And just said it depends on how good the wide receivers are. If the wide receivers aren't ready, I might like the Washington quarterback over Carr because he can score with his leg. I mean, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, Andrew, that's fair. I mean, if Damon Williams is a dynamic athlete and can make a lot of things out of structure, I mean, it is a fair conversation for us to have in terms of like, who would you rather have in the situation, right? I try to come from a glass half full perspective, an optimistic perspective, and I do think Notre Dame has more talent depth-wise in their wide receiver room in terms of God-given talent than they've had in a while. I know that it is not fully developed from a large scope, but I like to think that it's at least going to be better than it was in terms of depth. I don't know if any boundary in 2026 is going to be as good as Malachi Fields, for instance, right? But like as its entirety, I feel pretty good about the depth. So I'm just working off the assumption that the wide receiver position is going to continue to trend upward. Maybe that's flawed thinking on my part, but that's just going to kind of be where I'm working at. So let's talk about some of these quarterbacks, though, folks. Again, chats, get it involved there. I'm going to fly through 3 names that we need to know in the 2027 class for the Fighting Irish in terms of quarterback targets. The first one, best name that I have come across so far in the 2027 class. We're going to call him Champ Monz, but I'm going to call him Wonderful Monz the Fourth out of Vero Beach, Florida. Fantastic name. Champ Monz, Wonderful Monz. It doesn't matter what you want to go by. 6'2", 224 pounds. Interesting player, because we just talked about reclassification with Teddy Gerard. Monz was originally part of the 2028 class, and some people had him early as like the number 1 quarterback in 2028. Reclassifies to 2027. He has not started a game for Vero Beach yet. So he was at a school previously. I forget what high school it was. So he has played. He's been a starter in the high school level. But last year he was a backup to Ephraim White, who is the cornerback signee in the 2026 class to Florida State, which Notre Dame gave a look at for a little bit there. Ephraim White obviously was a dual threat quarterback in high school. Now will play cornerback in college. Now, Monz, you were thinking in theory that he was going to be a 2-year starter at Vero Beach, junior to senior year, but now he is just a senior year left. 6'2", 224, though, like I said, you are battling the Florida schools first and foremost, the Florida, Miami, Florida State trifecta there to potentially get the Vero Beach talent. He is visiting campus later this offseason, so Notre Dame is going to get an opportunity with Champ Monz, and Champ has actually been to Notre Dame before, so it will be a return visit, which is good. Return visits are always a positive at this stage, especially with a player, again, that does reclassify, which means that you get 1 year less of opportunities to recruit this player. So wonderful Champ Monz the Fourth, who I think is a very, very talented quarterback. Although his production is limited at Vero Beach because of the fact that he did serve as the backup last season, the efficiency numbers are very good, and the tape is really, really impressive. So I expect him to be a huge riser because he was considered to be that dude in the 2028 class. And anytime you were classified from 28 to 2027, that does affect your rankings to a degree, because anytime you're leveling up a year against a talent that is, a year ahead of you in terms of development, there is going to be some reclassification issues when it comes to recruiting rankings. But that kid, make no mistake about it, very talented. So the Florida schools, also Ohio State is a team to know for Champ Monz. I think Notre Dame has a fighting chance here. I'm not going to say like they have a great chance. I think that it is going to be tough, in my opinion, to get Champ Monz. But I do think they'll have a chance. They'll have a chance. And they need to have a really good return visit for him. But he is the guy that got offered a few weeks ago, and he was the first guy to be offered since that 2027 slot came open. So Champ Monz is definitely the first player that everyone is going to want to get on their radar. right. Let me just go through the chat real quick to make sure we are caught up here. We had Tex ND off the Notre Dame mark, kind of, sort of, but I hope we get to see Carver, Angeli, and Steve makes a good comeback from his injury. Yeah, Tex ND, I mean, I hope Steve gets back too. Steve Angeli, I was unfortunately at the Syracuse-Clemson game when he got hurt. I was down in Death Valley. And, yeah, I mean, he got hurt early in that game where he was gimpy, came back into the game, and then, obviously, I think it was his Achilles, right? I believe is what happened. So I don't know exactly what his timeline for recovery is. That was pretty early on in that season, so hopefully he comes back at some point in 2026. But, yeah, it was very unfortunate because Steve, production-wise, was having a really good year for Syracuse. And after he got hurt, that team nosedived. Like, they were horrible. Ricky Collins was bad, and they were playing – obviously, like that lacrosse player against Notre Dame. And yeah, it got really, really bad after Steve got hurt. So hopefully Steve does get back. All right, we had Irish Life. Tyler Buckner is a dark horse quarterback for 2027. Hey, Tyler, I know it's obviously a joke. Tyler is not on the roster anymore, though. Shout out to Tyler Buckner, though. Shout out. We had Andrew says, is the coach there a powerhouse? Shocking that a prospect of his caliber would sit. So, I mean, Vero Beach is a very good program. I believe they went 14-1 last year, if I remember, Andrew. I don't have like the win-loss record in front of me, but yeah, they're a very good program. And I mean, because like I don't know what his I don't know what his thought process was, to be honest with you, for deciding to reclassify. Like, because when he originally went to Vero Beach, I'm sure in his mind initially he was like, I'm going to have 2 years as a starting quarterback at Vero, but then he decides to reclassify. I don't know what the timeline was for like that decision to reclassify, which changes some things to a degree. Texas ND said a reclassifying means a junior has the grades to graduate early. It means that he's been taking extra classes and he's going to graduate early. Yes. So he's going to graduate a year ahead of time, which, I mean, obviously I'm sure he's been taking some AP advanced courses in high school. And I'm sure he's probably been taking some summer classes and stuff like that to try to get. A lot of kids do that now. I mean, not a lot of kids more kids are classified than they used to, but more kids are taking like a lot of classes early to, just be ahead of the curve, if that makes sense. Because some of these credits also do transfer to the college level, depending on what classes you take. So, absolutely. All right, next guy I want to talk about, the guy that I think Notre Dame has the best chance at right now, comparative to the three players, Camden Leati, who is out of Salt Lake City, Utah West, 6'3", 215 pounds. He is considered on the 247 Sports composite ranking as the number 129 overall player, number 10 quarterback, and number 2 player in the state of Utah for the 2027 recruiting class, coming off of a junior year where he had over 700 yards rushing and over 2,300 yards passing. I think he had like 25 touchdowns, if I remember correctly. Also had a dynamite sophomore year as well. This is a player that is currently committed today to the University of Illinois. I feel good about eventually someone flipping him. I think Notre Dame could absolutely be in contention there. He also has offers from Michigan, Florida, Tennessee, Oregon, Utah, Washington, amongst a bunch of others. He's got over 20 offers at this point. I think Notre Dame has the best chance to flip Leati. Clearly, despite him being a Utah kid, he's very open to coming to the Midwest, currently committed to the Illini. And I think that my vibes I've gotten from just talking is that I do think that he is very open to Notre Dame, and I think he has a high opinion of Notre Dame. So Camden Leati is a player that I do think Notre Dame will have a very good chance at flipping if he is the guy that they settle on for that quarterback spot. And I do think that they have a very high opinion of him. So I have no reason to believe that they won't end up pushing for a guy like Camden Leati. But I do think that obviously there's a high interest in Champ Monz. So we will see just how some of the visits go this offseason. I think that will give us great insight into which they want to push for most and which they will push for most. So we will see what the next step is there. But I like Camden Leati a lot, man. He's a very talented quarterback out of the state of Utah. Again, out of the 3 quarterbacks I'm talking about today, Champ Monz can run, but Champ Monz gives me more of like, and I'm not comparing them as players in terms of like predicting their outcomes, but stylistically, I would consider him more in like the DJ Lagway mold of he's a pocket passer that's athletic enough to escape, but he's not really a runner per se. Like he can run, but I consider Champ Monz a pocket quarterback. Camden Leati, even though I would say he's also a pocket quarterback, he does like some design run game stuff for West High School in Salt Lake City. So he has a little bit more of the rushing ability today comparatively to like a Champ Monz, for instance. So he is extremely interesting player that I think we need to keep a close eye on. And the last guy that has been offered that is also visiting Notre Dame soon is Davin Davidson, excuse me, quarterback out of Cardinal Mooney in Sarasota, Florida. 6'6.5", 215 pounds. Also a baseball player for Cardinal Mooney and a very good baseball player for Cardinal Mooney. Of course, Cardinal Mooney, for anybody that has listened to me or listened to any other Notre Dame recruiting guy in the industry, Cardinal Mooney is Elijah Golden, 2026 class, defensive tackle that obviously signed with Notre Dame. Their head coach is Jared Clark, who was a former Notre Dame player himself. So some ties to Notre Dame here, without question. Davidson is, of the three, I would say I think he has the most boomer bust potential of the three. In terms of, if he hits, I think he has a lot of upside. But I also think there are some worry I have in terms of him being slightly underdeveloped, just because I think he's been just kind of a multi-sport guy that maybe hasn't had full attention on one. So I do think that when he has full attention on one, he does have opportunity to be a big riser. But he is currently listed as a 4-star and 247 composite, 283 overall, 20 quarterback in the 2027 class, and 32 player in the state of Florida. He has been blowing up this offseason, has had a ton of offers this offseason, now has offers from Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Miami. So I'm going down the list. Auburn, Cal, Duke, Georgia Tech, Iowa, Louisville, Michigan State, Mississippi State. Very, very interesting player. Does not run much at all, for his high school, but he has the natural arm velocity and the size. He's going to be a 6'6", 230-pound quarterback relatively early in his college career. So he's kind of like that toolsy upside kid. And I think that he does have easy opinions and early opinions of Notre Dame for the Notre Dame ties that Notre Dame does have to Cardinal Mooney, right? So we will see in terms of pecking order. I'm going to be fully transparent here. I'm not 100% sure quite how let me phrase this the best way I can. I'm not 100% sure what the pecking order is of these three quarterbacks for Notre Dame in terms of if Davin Davidson wanted to commit tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure if Notre Dame would take that commitment. And I could be completely wrong about that. That's just, I don't know enough about that situation, to be honest with you. Because I do think that the timing of offers it tells a story, right? Like Champ Monz was the guy that got the offer first. And then in the same day, Camden Leati and Davin Davidson got the offers as well. So pecking order wise, I think Notre Dame does have high interest in Champ Monz. But if they are feeling like we don't have a realistic chance at Champ Monz, I do think that they'll obviously turn their sights on one of these two quarterbacks. Pecking order between the two, I'm not 100% sure if there is a separation between Leati and Davidson, or if it would be a whoever wants to commits, right? Like similarly to what we saw with like Noah Grubbs and Brady Hart in the 2026 class originally. Is it that type of situation? I will see. I'm not 100% sure about that. All right. But those are the three quarterbacks, folks. That's what we have right now. Monz, Davidson, Leati. That's the three right now. We have two of them that are visiting this offseason. Leati, I think, is trying to set up a visit, so hopefully you get all three on campus sometime over the next couple months, but we will see what happens next. Let's take a couple comments before I get out of here. We had Nathan Pettit who says, do you think Teddy or Noah Grubbs will be ready to play first? I think Noah Grubbs probably has the developmental curve above Teddy just because he's a year older. He's played a lot of football in the state of Florida. I think he probably has a higher floor than Teddy. I'm fascinated to see how those guys develop side by side with like redshirt years potentially in front of them. That's the interesting part. Tex ND says, no, Grubbs was the second choice when Deuce decommitted. Gerard was always a first choice, so the only issue will be him being younger. That is not 100% true there, Tex ND. So Grubbs was not the second choice to Deuce. Blake Hebert is the 2025 quarterback that you're talking about. Noah Grubbs and Brady Hart were the two guys that were highest on Notre Dame's pecking order in 2026, and they would have taken commitments from either Noah Grubbs or Brady Hart, whoever wanted to commit first. So Grubbs was an early priority in the 2026 class. Deuce Knight was committed in 2025. If you remember, at that time, it was actually Bear Bachmeier and Deuce were the two guys they were pushing for. Deuce decided to commit to Notre Dame, was there for about a year, and Bear Bachmeier faded off in the sunset, and then they got back in with Blake Heberts after Deuce eventually decommitted from Notre Dame. So just a little bit of timeline stuff there as well. And then he also followed up with, reminds me of quarterback Denbrock had at Cincinnati. Are you talking about Tony Pike? I don't know if he had Tony Pike, but here Connor does give me Tony Pike vibes a little bit. Does give me Tony Pike vibes a little bit. Yep, and you're right. Bear Bachmeier has done very well at BYU. All right, folks, I got a busy day of podcasting in front of me. So those are the 3 quarterbacks, 2027 recruiting class. Again, back next week, I will start to get back to the Wednesday noon Eastern time slate. Before you get out of here, though, whether you are live with me on YouTube or on Facebook, make sure to subscribe or follow those pages. Make sure that you hit that like button on any and all podcast platforms. And I will talk to you again next week. Everyone have a great weekend. And as always, go Irish.